Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are at the top of the hour, but we are going to wait another 30 seconds or so before beginning to let others join, because we could see the attendees entering. Still see a couple people coming in, so I'm going to give it another 20 seconds. Okay, so with that, we will get started. I'd like to thank everyone to the broadcast today. We appreciate your time and attention, and look forward to continued discussions and dialogue. My name is Mark Hogan. I'm the head of cloud sales and operations here in the States. With me today, I have Seth Helgeson, who's one of our lead architects, and Todd Gawker, who's our head of marketing here in the U.S. for Ionis. Collectively, today, we look forward to talking to you and giving you a little bit of exposure to why Ionis is the premier cloud provider for SMBs. You're going to learn a little bit about how quickly and easily our infrastructure is deployed, the capabilities of our transparency and visibility into the cost utilization, as well as the flexibility and security around the platform. We encourage you to ask questions, so please do. Feel free to use the question button at any moment in time, and we will interrupt the broadcast and make sure we address the questions as quickly as possible. Also, please note that today's viewing is being recorded, and we look forward to sharing the recording after the fact if you are interested. So with that, we can move on. So as you may know, Ionis is a global entity headquartered out of Germany. We pride ourselves on the heritage of our hosting as well as our cloud business. We have over 22 million domains hosted, 6 million customers supported worldwide, over 32 data centers, which are essentially hosting, managing, and supporting workloads on over 100,000 servers. You can see our footprint is a global footprint from an infrastructure perspective. Honing in on the North American footprint, we have data centers in Las Vegas, in Kansas City, as well as New Jersey, and our corporate headquarters is in Philadelphia. And additionally, you have access through our platform and our data center designer to any of our data centers in Europe for supporting your workloads as needed. Just a little bit about Ionis before we jump into the platform itself and give you a sneak peek. Just wanted to make sure you had an understanding of who we are from our fundamentals and pillars and historically. As you may know, we have a wide range of services that can support anything from web hosting, domain hosting, all the way up through the infrastructure and cloud and public cloud platforms. We pride ourselves on being focused on data protection and compliance, everything from ISO to IT baseline, as well as SOC 2. And all the way through being 100% GDPR compliant for those that want to comply with the European laws. Additionally, I want to mention that we are built on open source technology. The platform itself is built on the KVM platform with a keen focus on leveraging our partner community and building out additional capabilities through that ecosystem. You'll also find that we pride ourselves on being socially and obviously corporate responsible. We have all of our data centers running on clean energy. We have a carbon neutral footprint, which we are very proud of. And additionally, we focusing on using renewable energy and sources throughout all of our facilities when and where possible. We've been in business for over 25 years. This year actually represents our 25th birthday, so happy birthday, Ionis, and all of our partners. We have a broad range of expertise that we look forward to bringing and sharing with you through a focus on high-level engagement and partnership. We have 24/7 local support, English-speaking support, or local native language support, depending on where you may be sitting, as well as pre and post-sale professional services that can help you not only ascertain how to leverage the cloud platform, but what that journey may look like. And we will be with you side by side as needed to support you through not only the design and build, but also the implementation of those services from a consultative perspective. Moving on, I just wanted to highlight the portfolio of services that we do have available. Everything from domains and SSL services all the way through website design, hosting, building, and e-commerce. We also pride ourselves on our business productivity suite and as well as our hosting capabilities. Focus point for today is going to be our public cloud offering, which we consider the premier platform for the SMB market, which we will go into detail on our infrastructure as a service suite. Seth Helgeson will be going over how quickly we can build and actually deploy a domain controller, for instance, as well as giving you an understanding of what our capabilities are from a storage backup all the way up through DevOps capabilities, and potentially even speaking on behalf of some of our platform as a service capabilities. Moving on, what you will find is that there are three primary reasons our users benefit from our services. And the first and foremost, it's the simplicity and ease of use. What you're going to see from Seth and the quick demonstration he's going to provide is a very easily adopted point, click, drag, and drop capability where you can provision an entire high-performing secure data center literally in seconds and have it up and running within minutes. Next reason is transparency and observability. One of the points of feedback that we often receive from our user community is that when they're with other providers, typically the hyperscalers, they don't have access to really understanding, number one, what are they consuming from an IO perspective, how much of their resources are being consumed, and number two, what that leads to is a lack of awareness on what the invoice is going to look like at the end of the month for some of the burstable instances. And this leads to, unfortunately, surprise invoices, which they have no control over. What you'll find with the data center designer is we actually give you insight into every resource and project in real time, meaning after you build and provision your services, you have insight into not only what the projected cost will be at the end of month, but actually you can monitor the performance and throughput in real time through the deployment and the project duration. Lastly, what you're going to find is that our platform is built to provide you flexibility and performance. So we have varying server classes for you to leverage, which will help you align cost with performance and obviously availability needs. But also it allows you to interoperate within those and align the appropriate cost and performance requirement to your workload. And then scale it quickly and effectively without losing any performance or having any degradation in performance. And should you need to make adjustments on the fly, you absolutely can with no need to reboot. So I said a lot, and now I'll hand it over to Seth Helgeson to actually walk you through and show you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And again, thanks to everyone who's joined. We always appreciate being able to present Ionis to everyone. And what we heard from Mark was really the three pillars: the simple, transparent, and flexible manner by which we go through implementing environments. Those are great words to throw out there, but let's actually see where the rubber meets the road and build something out real time here. Within our platform, what you're going to see is that everything is accessed through a web interface. We try to make this as simple as possible to provision your environment so that in other environments, for example, you may need to take a long time to become certified, do training, go through all of those hoops in order to be able to build out an environment. We are trying to take that away by making a drag and drop environment for you to provision your data centers within. Within our DCD interface, our data center designer interface, we have a very simple format. We have virtual data centers, which are collections of resources. Typically, we recommend isolating your resources by customer or by function, whatever works for you. It's flexible for you to be able to build that out the way that you want. But let's create a domain controller just to start with. A very simple implementation. We're going to click Create New, and we're going to choose from a data center across the world. I'm in North America. I'm going to choose Newark, New Jersey as our data center location, and I'm going to call this a domain controller environment. Now, just because I'm calling this a domain controller virtual data center does not mean that's the only thing that can go in there. We can put plenty of different things in there. So I'm going to create that, and that's going to bring us to our drag and drop interface that you can see here. On this grid, we can decide what services we want to deploy. For our purposes to start with, I'm going to start with our most cost-effective class in our Cubes platform. This Cube server instance is available in predetermined sizes, small through quadruple extra large. And what we're going to do for our domain controller is start, and this goes across the board, we want to start as small as possible and expand as needed. And that's really how we should be doing things in the cloud. So for our instances, most domain controllers are not doing a lot. So I'm going to choose a Cube M in this case. I'm going to call it a domain controller so I can keep track of it. And then I'm going to connect it to the internet by grabbing the plus sign and dragging it up to our internet access icon. You can see in this format, we have a direct attached NVMe storage provisioned for 80 gigs. We have 2 cores and 4 gig of RAM for this Cube medium. With this all set, I'm going to select an image that we want to use by selecting the direct attached storage and going to the image section. You can choose from many different image locations. You can upload your own images. You can use snapshots from a previously created environment, or use the Ionis provided images, including Windows images. So I'm going to make this a Windows 2022 server. I'm going to set a password. This is going to be the initial administrator password when this comes up. This looks good to me. I'm going to click on Provision Changes to start this up. You can see it does a sanity check when first doing it. I didn't name the storage to keep track of it. I'm going to leave that for now. And I'm going to click Provision Now. And this is going to start the process within this virtual data center to create this Windows instance. It'll take a couple minutes to do. While that's taking place, I'm going to go to one of my other data centers that I've previously built.
Seth, as you're doing that, a question came up.
Sure.
If I have my own image, can I bring it into the data center?
Yes, absolutely. So with your own images, those images could be built within the data center itself, or from our management section, you can see our images and snapshots. If you have a VMware or Hyper-V or another provider's image format, you can FTP upload that image to the data center that you want to build your instances in, and then connect those images that you upload to the instance as you create it. So yes, absolutely possible.
Thank you.
Jumping back to what we were looking at before, we are just spinning up a simple domain controller in this environment. You can see that it's still provisioning. Some other environments that can get a little bit more complicated, but often come around, is having a public wide area network interface, but also a private LAN within our instances. And this is often done when customers want to bring their own firewall instance. So outside of a simple firewall that can be set on any instance type under the network, you can see there's a firewall section here. You can create a simple port-based ingress-egress bidirectional firewall type with simple rules to apply to that. and that would be when your box is outside on the internet, or for those that are creating a more complicated environment or need VPN tunnels or a more in-depth security footprint, you can also bring your own firewall image. We support everything from free pfSense, OpenSense firewall images to full-blown UTM environments like Sophos, FortiGate, SonicWall. You can bring any firewall flavor that you want in order to maintain your compliance footprint there. From that standpoint, with these environments, going to the transparency of what we are building out, I'm going to jump back to our domain controller here, which should be just about ready to come up. There we go. Once this is built out, this server has started running. It's just finishing its last Windows steps. But as soon as I provision this and the provisioning is complete, I can see how much this environment is going to cost me on a 30-day basis. And I can do that by going to the upper right-hand corner where your initials are and going to the cost and usage section. Ignore this number. I have many data centers that I don't pay for. But what you can do is sort your data centers. You can see this is the domain controller environment that we just started building. I click on this domain controller and you can see everything down to 2 cores, 4 gig of RAM, running Windows 2022, and the estimated monthly cost for this environment is going to be $32.37. That is part of the transparency that we bring to the environment. Again, talking to what Mark brought up, we don't want anyone getting a surprise invoice, spinning up a couple of environments and not realizing that they spun up the most expensive environment possible. We want you to always be able to bring up that cost and usage section, look at it, and make sure you're in the spending category or spending realm that you want to be in for each environment. Jumping back now to our domain controller, I think a lot of you going through this are saying, okay, you built this domain controller, but how do I access it? Well, first off, when this comes up in this particular configuration, we just connected this Windows server, which we will turn into a domain controller, directly to the internet. And what that means is that when it came up, it received a real IPv4 address via DHCP. And this address you can directly RDP into, or within the environment, should you need to, you can right-click on the instance and go to console. This will bring up the direct console access to the Windows instance. From here, you can log in, do any configurations that you may need to initially, or again, RDP so that your RDP session is much faster than a console instance. Obviously, one of the things that we just talked about before, having a real IPv4 instance with this Windows server out on the internet is not exactly the most secure environment. So we could lock down access to that instance using the network-based firewall that we talked about before, only allowing our domain controller ports from certain environments or certain IP locations, or going into the flexibility of the environment, going to that 2-network approach where we have a public and a private separated by a firewall. Typically, what I will do for these types of environments is create another small cube instance. Firewalls don't need much. One vCPU and 2 gig of RAM is plenty for most firewall instances. And what we will do is connect that firewall instance to our public internet and create an internal private network and disconnect our domain controller from that public network so that it's safe behind this private network now. Once I've established this, I like this, then I would click provision. What you can do from a firewall standpoint, if you've uploaded a firewall image via that FTP approach that I mentioned before, you would then go to your own images section. And you can see here, I already have a FortiGate appliance that's up there. You can also do any boot approaches where if you have a CD-ROM ISO, where you're going to do a direct installer, you can also do that approach by grabbing the CD-ROM icon, dragging it out to your firewall instance, setting it as the boot device, going to your own images, and here I have an OpenSense ISO that I've previously uploaded, so that in this case I could go through the installer process. So here I'll take this off because I'm just going to build it from scratch and provision these changes to bring it up. Again, it's doing a sanity check just to make sure everything looks okay. I'm going to provision that, and it's going to start changing this environment so that our Windows instance is now on a private, non-internet routable address, while our firewall is the only device with an external address. And we'll see that once it comes up. Jumping back to one of the tenets that we go to from a transparent standpoint is that starting as small as possible and upgrading as you need to is the most important thing to keep your costs under control, no matter what cloud environment you're going to. And one of the ways that we help with that is by providing simple to see performance metrics on any of our instances. So when you're in the DCD, you could click on an instance and go to the metrics and get an idea of the load average for the CPU network, all of those types of things, so that you can say, okay, I've provisioned this environment, I've made it as small as possible. How am I going to know when I need to possibly upgrade it? And by this manner, if your CPU is jumping up and staying up in the 75% range, then you know, okay, I might want to take a look at either the next cube instance size or go to our next class of server, which is our server class, which I'm going to drag out here. And the differences between our server class and our cubes class is that the server class is fully customizable to the number of cores and RAM that you want to use within that environment. It is also fully customizable from the storage to add to it. So you can add HDD, which is spinning magnetic. That's going to be the cheapest storage, or SSD. And you can also mix and match those storage types if you want as well. So you could have a HDD storage drive with an SSD partition running your OS, or any combination thereof. The other thing with our server class environment is that the cores and RAM are dedicated to that server. So in many other cloud environments, you will get things like burstable servers or servers that have a nice name to them, but really what they mean is you're not getting full access to the core and RAM. You're getting time sliced in those environments. And what we offer here is that this is just like a dedicated bare metal machine, but it's running on top of our totally redundant clusters, so that you don't need to worry about disaster scenarios or failure scenarios from a hardware level. You can leave that to us running on our clusters and just provision for what you need.
Seth, we had two questions come in. They seem somewhat related.
Great.
First question, and I'll answer this. The answer is yes. You already mentioned it. You can leverage the performance class in combination with the server class in combination with the cubes.
Yes.
So that is a yes. The second question was, can these servers be start and stopped? And also, am I billed when the server is stopped?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So jumping back to our domain controller environment, which just finished provisioning before, these cube instances are provisioned and they cannot be started and stopped. However, our performance class instances that you can see here do have a start and stop option associated with them, like this one. So those can be started and stopped. And for the server class, if you stop the server, you are not billed for the CPU and RAM that is associated with that. You are only billed for the storage that you've provisioned, since typically when you start and stop a server, you don't want the data to just disappear on you. So that is the case with those. You would not pay for the cores and RAM for a server that is stopped. The cubes cannot be started and stopped, but again, everything that you provision within our environment is billed down to the minute. So if you decide at any point that you have a server that's running, but you don't think you're going to need it for a while, maybe it's a development environment or something along those lines. If you want to keep the data associated with that, you can create a snapshot of the drive, which is an exact copy of the instance at that point, and then use that snapshot at a future date to spin up the cube instance again for that development environment. So you don't have to go through and rebuild everything. One of the other things that is also done with snapshots is talking about, when we looked at the metrics before, if our CPU utilization is again going up into that 75% realm, and we're ready to go to the next level up. We did a medium in this case, so maybe we want to take this up to a large. After we've taken the snapshot, we would then spin up this server, this new instance, the large instance, from the snapshot that we created. That way we don't have to go through the reinstallation process and all of those things. Everything is an exact copy at that point. Just jumping back into the, unless there was another question, I don't think I saw one, but jumping back into our domain controller environment, you remember we started with the single domain controller, and then we added this firewall instance, which we can access again via that console for the initial firewall configuration. You can see here. But since we modified that environment, we also want to know, okay, what is my bill going to be after I've just added this? And going back to our cost and usage section, we can see that in that domain controller VDC, since we added that firewall, which is a Linux image, we added another $11 a month to our, clicking on things, another $11 a month to our cost for this particular environment. So now our cost has been brought up to $43 for that. This particular environment also includes the Windows licensing cost, so you don't need to worry about that, choosing that. But the firewall product, should you bring your own firewall product, those are all purchased directly from the reseller or from the firewall vendor.
Well, as you're on that screen, Seth, one area that I'd like to interject, a point of feedback that I've received from many customers, specifically those that are managing multiple projects and multiple clients, let's say for the MSP spaces, is as you have listed there all of your data centers. Each of those data centers can get drilled into, and you can actually rationalize the cost for each client per se, if each of those data centers is a client, or let's just call them a project, each project. Aside from that, as you look at the utilization, you have the ability to understand and ascertain where are you under leveraged and where are you over leveraged. So for example, if one of those projects were client specific and you were only consuming, let's say 20% of the allocated resources, you have the ability to actually bring the resources down, and then you have the, I guess, the option to either hold on to that cost savings or relay it to your client or end user within the project, which is always a nice feature that our clientele give us feedback on.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mark. Mm-hmm. It's always a nice thing, and we are always asked for that. Jumping back into our domain controller environment that we built. Again, in this particular setup, this is all well and good. I've got a domain controller. Quite often, what people will do is utilize the firewall instance to build a VPN tunnel to an existing Windows environment in order to replicate the Active Directory traffic. The way that you go about that is obviously flexible and up to you. But one of the pieces we always like to bring up as well is that while the instances, especially this domain controller instance and any other instances you provision, while they are running in our fully redundant clusters in our environment, we always take a belt and suspenders approach to everything that we build out, meaning that having the most redundant environment possible is great, but unfortunately, sometimes malware or other external actors come in, which necessitates the need for a full backup solution. And from that standpoint, what we have is a direct integration with IONOS from a backup standpoint that is built within our console so that you can create backup units or agents to place on your servers and access them all via the backup console within the data center designer environment. And you can see as this screen pops up, it brings you to the entire feature set of the Acronis backup product, where you can fine tune the backups down to how often you want them backed up, how long you want to keep your backups, what backup rotations you want to implement, and also some other nice features that Acronis puts in along the lines of anti-malware scanning and quarantining, so that if it picks up things in your backups during those scans, you automatically get notified and are able to take action upon it before things go south on you. I'll close this backup console out. Some of the other things that I always like to go through as well within our environment is the ability to expand. So we want to give the ability for most people to be able to provision any type of environment, a Windows environment, or maybe even a Linux environment, as quickly and easily as possible. So again, we have all of those images. You can bring your own image, but you can also provision a Linux environment. In this case, I created a Linux server. I'm going to connect that to my internal network, give it a name. And here, instead of the administrator password, this is going to set the root password on boot, but you can also upload your own SSH keys through our management menu by going to management and SSH keys. And that way you're able to manage the keys that you use. And by selecting a key, this will automatically be injected into the instance when it's provisioned, so that you can directly SSH to it. It makes it a lot easier. I'll provision those changes again. This is doing a check because I previously deleted a server that I had in there. It's just saying, hey, are you sure you want to delete that? By asking me for my master password and then going through the provisioning process with that. In terms of additional features and functionality as well as this is going along, all of your external devices, if you leave them as default when they're connected to the internet, they're going to get a DHCP address from Ionis, a real IP address. But the thing with dynamically assigned IP addresses is that they change when you restart the instance. That doesn't work quite often. So in this case, for some of these, we want to have static IP addresses. That's done from within our IP management section, where you can reserve IP addresses in the data center that you're in and then assign it to the instance so that you don't lose that IP address and you always connect via the same IP address. With that still spinning up, we have a couple of other, there we go. You can see now I have my Linux server in there. I can access this Linux server also again directly via the console. It's already up and ready to log in. And of course, what is this going to cost us every month? And going to my cost and usage section, you can see I brought my total costs up to $54 now with those two additional small instances. Jumping back to some of the other features, again, that ability to easily drag and drop and provision where you don't need certifications, you don't need to be certified in any of those other cloud providers to figure out how to do this. This is the, lifting that barrier to entry for many of the people that use our platform, being able to easily do this. it's a great feature. So many people use it, but a lot of people who may be more technically in the weeds say, well, I have absolutely no use for this, which is great. I always use it from a visual standpoint. I use a lot of different things, but one of the things that we have also is a full API and SDK integration so that you can provision your entire infrastructure and your environments via code, should you be a developer or something along those lines. And going into the development realm, some of the other features that we have out there for more advanced use cases are things like our managed Kubernetes, where you can create Kubernetes clusters where Ionis handles the provisioning and installation and redundancy of that cluster on the back end, and you just interact with the cluster the way that you would using whichever Kubernetes tool set you choose.
So, Seth, just real quick, there was a question that came across. Is there a Canadian data center option? And if not, is it planned? The answer is there is not a data center in Canada today. Obviously, all Canadian users can access our North American or European data centers as needed. But interestingly enough, there has been much discussion about how we service the Canadian market best. So those discussions are happening, and I will be sure to keep you in tune on any timelines should we elect to create a data center in Canada.
Yeah, awesome. A couple other features just to jump through real quick. We talked about that development environment in Kubernetes. We also have database environments in Postgres and MongoDB. And just like our Kubernetes environment, these are managed environments, so you don't have to worry about installing Postgres or MongoDB in a redundant clustered fashion. We build out the cluster, we take care of the installation, we take care of the monitoring and management of that, and you just access the cluster as you need it from your instances, taking out a lot of need for things like a DBA to constantly monitor your database environments and make sure everything's working correctly. Close this. A couple of other things besides the backup unit. We also have S3 storage that you can access via the console or create your own devices or your own buckets, excuse me. Those are also available through APIs and SDKs. And we have some additional advanced features that you can bring into your environment as well. One of the other common use cases besides a redundant domain controller or maybe a terminal services environment from a Windows standpoint is we have customers who like to build out load balanced web applications. And we do some of these things via our load balancer instances, which again, you would just drag and drop to provision, connecting that to the internet, and then creating your web instances from maybe a gold image or a gold snapshot you've already created via our composite creation tool. So this would be our web instances, and our composite tool spins up multiple instances based off of the same image or snapshot. So maybe I have a simple IIS server that I want to put behind that, and I want to create 4 of them. And that's going to dump that in there. We'll connect our load balancer to that particular network. And that way we can load balance across our web instances via this load balancer environment. The load balancer takes a little bit longer to provision, about 10 minutes. So I'm not going to provision that right this instance, but has multiple load balancing algorithms and stickiness associated with that. So you have the ability to determine how you want to load balance the traffic that's coming in for the web. In these types of configurations, one thing that we also see as well is that this is through the load balancer is all inbound web communication, but we really need these instances to be able to get out to the web so that they can get patches and updates and all of that good type of stuff. From there, what we can use is a NAT gateway, which is used for that outbound access so that these devices can then access the items that they need on the internet, but without any other inbound access. So maintaining your security posture from that standpoint. Taking things even a little bit more complicated as we go along, you can also cross-connect all of these different network instances, so, or network types. So maybe this particular network type right now is segmented, but maybe we want to add another interface on the firewall to that load balanced environment so that we could gain access from any of these servers to these servers and vice versa. And we can do that via the drag and drop just to provision it. So you can see we have a lot of options just within the drag and drop interface. We have a ton of options also with our APIs and SDKs, which I always love getting into the weeds with. And from that standpoint, this is the simple, transparent, and flexible environment that Ionis tries to bring to the marketplace. And I hope that this is resonating with you guys and that it makes sense. And from there, I will leave it open for any other questions.
Well, greatly appreciate all the insight you've provided here, Seth. Definitely a pretty cool platform and an awesome tool from my perspective. So I do appreciate you sharing your perspective on the platform. As we wait for any additional questions, if you could, by chance, jump back into the presentation, I can just walk the participants through just the last just data point of who uses Ionis at this perspective. So if you could jump down to, I guess it is the value prop and the flexibility and the screen of I guess it would be slide 15. What you can see is we have a lot of users that use our platform. Predominantly the SaaS providers and ISVs and developers focus on leveraging our platform, as well as MSPs. You can see inherently the ability to quickly deploy infrastructure and the visibility in the cost and utilization. And also typical end users who are just looking to deploy any virtual infrastructure, whether it be internal workloads or customer-facing workloads. So we run through the gamut, but really see the biggest traction and utilization from developers, ISVs, SaaS providers, MSPs, and end users in the manufacturing and retail spaces that are looking to leverage elastic and virtual compute for any particular workloads. So with that, I don't see any additional questions. I'd really like to thank Seth for his time, and I'd like to thank those of you who participated. Hopefully we've brought you some value regarding how to leverage the Ionis Cloud platform for your workloads and gave you a little bit of insight into how quickly and easily deployable cloud infrastructure could be when it's done thoughtfully and with the proper tooling. So with that, thank you everyone. Have a great day, and please feel free to reach out with any further questions. The recording will be made available. Have a great day. Thank you.